Hello, I would like to thank first the people of healthcare and our need. Everyone needs exceptions in exception nature, where everyone's forced to rely, where healthcare people are forced to rely upon other type identities of experts in relationship to unnatural and tactically even juxtaposed by one method impositions upon all identity ground locations, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. And so this is relevant to a vertical and horizontal databases-oriented method that is using and having used at all identity ground locations. Then further, intercampuses. For example, in relationship to where and how. Correlation nature's metaphysical fabric, if you will. And that is simultaneous with its identity. Physical fabric, if you will. It is simultaneously bound with identity's fabric. Identity's volume. The body is not, the metaphysic is invisible but still discernible. Body's not, that's the fabric, and that's the, what is the other one? The volume. This is what I'm trying to say. This is about relativity. Not as a theory. See now, all identity ground locations as victims, syntax wise, increasingly have to value. We have to, and with identity ground locations that were afforded, just like poverty, tactically affected, only capable of being fathomed, and worse, uses of space, uses of human means, resources, because of sequence nature treatments, because of simultaneous nature of treatments, because that's identity. Identity is what is about what is an observation of negative and positive simultaneously. Because that's what correlation nature or discorrelation nature is in demonstration of. And so this is where and how we have the branches of government, for example, involved with conversations outside. Like they could say, pretend, or we don't want to make healthcare look bad. Where and how there is corruption that has nothing to do with healthcare. Where and how we have people with badges, including with military, involved in intercampuses, involved with private also on the medical campuses of Connecticut, for example, with various natures of courts already being and having been involved, used remotely, just like the overt criminal, kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts, the same finite, active, progressive lies, rolls with this vertical and horizontal database method that former Mayor Gold's daughter was involved with, for example. Attaching me to fake conversations, pretending passions or emotions, and then you have no communications with others. If you say things like that, then they adapt. Because they have live progressions from people with medical campuses and with educational campuses of each age and nature, interstates, intercities, that are kept needing to hide with private databases at the same time, and overt criminal enterprises shared in hundreds of nations policing already all investigations. Identities of law per this method that keeps the age of correlation nature as a victim predator, as a victim where it is sustained, where reactions to it stay incomplete. They're blaming the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, fake positive in collusion with that, on other things other than themselves. Our founders would be upset, but they would be wanting us to use correlation, nature, and sequence true, and to use as evidence that and how they not only didn't have free speech. It is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed that people pretend for medically criminal reasons that because James Madison didn't sign the Declaration of Independence, that he's not our founder of our country. Because they have self-valued roles with that forced theater. That theater having been forced to pretend other came about that made the Declaration of Independence because of how all locations, areas, and states, including North and South, had slavery, not just slavery against black people, but against everyone. If you're forced to roles with that, you're a forced standing criminal in citizen's nature. You're a forced use to defend that because you want to be about positive anyway. You're gonna say, "Oh, well, I didn't make those international laws individually." See, the devil method, and or an archetypal criminal enterprise method, and or a genie method, and all exceptions are a demonstration. There's a method. There was a method to all identity ground locations, areas, and states. Blaming, even when they, including wherein how they would blame on the real causes, they would value that set up for them, like money, or greed, or things like that. So that would be that would stay in the nervous system, out of sequence. Victim, reaction to everyone at once. So, in other words, and defending that anyway, rather than using the simultaneous evidences. Of course, that's not free, and that's making increasingly valued the people overtly not free. I mean, and everyone's increasingly not free. They say, "Oh, look, but now we have millionaires and stuff like that." As long as we stay apart from the native system, that doesn't is science, evolution science, that does not leave out the ground, leave out that which is naturally tied to our syntax nature, why and how we are valued this way. That is positive or negative to itself, a nature. It is positive value nature, progressions, acts, nature, more means from nowhere. More temporary positive from nowhere, as temporary / lasting, quality of diffusion, as temporary / lasting positive, inseparable from what is as the system we have forced to be conformity with, and its physical delusions, and its rules, crimes, methods, and as its readings of statutes originally instilled, that is evidence. We need to indict and then make them have the agreement, the branches of government and the overt criminal enterprises and the private ones, and the opinions and convictions simultaneously. Recorded dishonest and pretending and having pretended others in relationship to this method. So that people I didn't have anything to do with when I was in grammar school, who had roles with where and how. This I'm going to show you. You could see from how, because of how non-distinctly every campus it has this vertical and horizontal method. But this has the campuses of each age in nature, vertically and horizontally, needed to hide life aggressions, need to hide self-value uses of the human nature as criminals in collusion with, in ways that, where everyone blames other things, but it's not our fault. That's not by accident, though. This is a breaching method where we have naive reactions, where everything's, where we have the elements all through ages, where both parties, for example, in all parts of the political branch of government, individually grouped in together. I remember they are recorded originally and still only capable of being lipoaggressions as victims, not realizing, right back to all identity ground locations. But realizing means needs. To hide that per their roles with investigators, and vetting identities. And this is where and how that is relevant to all locations. In ways where hundreds of nations at once, here and there, they have to stay relevant to all locations. So they more and more they have to leave out all that is actually tied, where all that is faked together, where all that increasingly values those sides where they're not properly bonded. This method from semi-ancient times knew that modern nations, latter semi-ancient nations, would be forced to trick, persuade, only capable of increasingly valuing how nations were brought individually grouped and together. Tactical ulterior from how we are supposed to be, how we are revealed. Before criminally foreign influenced educational processes, which is simultaneous uses of the campuses and the republic's relationship, concentrated relationship /S to identity of the ground locations in that system, like the ancient gaming system, only feels like games, evolution science, revealed to cause positive value nature progressions, acts and natures, means from nowhere, Santa's fruits and gifts. Lifts or leaves, Leaf of Hades. It goes. Leaf of Hades is for space nature transfer, per YouTuber Anthony Wall. So, by the way, YouTube, I took a survey on YouTube. I don't mean to say a bad thing. I'm trying to say all the online platforms, the policing and how they have sensitive, because you have to deal with the hundreds of. They make bad things go on with the areas because everyone has to, like, they have identities of the law. They have a hierarchy. That hierarchy, for example, former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his defendant capacities, and before that and after that, which in a case where that was ongoing too, at the time of the plaintiff's death, they attached a whole bunch of people tied to the former director of the FBI and to federal criminal co-defendants of his in 2006 case, involved with all kinds of roles with identity of the ground, uses, tied to and as roles with people with stacking with predicate acts roles as victim predators. So now if you have to use their names, they brought their names up. See, this is why it's important to understand how investigators, and identities of the law, and identities pretending and having pretended to be about integrity, how they are kept victims, incapable of defending that and of affording discern the defense of people's identities properly. down to finite instances, down grouped and or even overall simultaneously, distinctly, non-distinctly, and something that's exploited, and where and how this is manifest. So everyone experiences in positions where people separate subjects and deny the relevance of where and how those subjects, the identity of those subjects is present with those other identity of ground locations, subjects, and quality of fact, cheapening nature. Ground and phenomena. And phenomena / phenomena. This is where and how we are Trinity nature. This is what English was revealed, how it was revealed to be taught. This is how the other languages were revealed to be taught. Because exception and exception nature is a value, so we could discern all that is to what is to the order of physics, to the order of metaphysics, as the order of physics, as the order of metaphysics, as the order of identity, simultaneously. But free speech has been forced, pretended, legitimate, since semi-ancient times. Per roles with uses of identity ground locations, that has, in a way that has every individual grouping together into the defenses of treatments of positive and negative, which are simultaneously treatments of identity in ways that no one realized, but through how they could exploit that as native reactions to it, where and how people are actually motivated, and where and how, where even that's juxtaposed through other apparent. This motivates interbranch to influence their kids with, and when it's not true, it's differentially, simultaneously true by a method that has the private and the private criminal enterprise, the identity ground locations, though. Has the overt criminal enterprises, has killers, people associated with the body dumping spots, people will associate with the syntax when bad things happen. Per all that is tied to where and how the investigators, and everyone's uses of everyone's names ties back to that method with the grounded with the locations next to child schools. So we need a legitimate backbone between the schools and intercities, and in relationship to all the phenomenon being and having been exploited. Where it's being exploited is increasingly valuing having been exploited. Roles with a breaching method, roles with a predicate acts delivery system method that knew that roles with it wouldn't be able to defend that and afford defense of the identities of the leader of any nation other than through their theater. So when they speak of emotions and passions, they have philosophies and theories juxtaposed with physical delusions, because they have been relying upon identities of the law, including ones with badges, including ones with gavels, who are recorded and involved with the locations crimes, who are victims. But there are victim predators involved with the sequence. In other words, they're lying with the overt criminal enterprises, with the private ones, when not with themselves, and with the military when not with themselves, and or with the other countries. All these countries involved, like Russian families. I don't know why they confess to me Russia. I don't have anything to do with them. They have something to do with like DACA and fire departments and these people involved on and off campuses with the vertical and horizontal juxtaposed natures of even organized crime with the kids. And these are interbranch family members, their kids. They steal from people and something like that. They do, and they blame on other people. All exception nature demonstration of the same thing. Because of how not just because of how the identity of the ground is being used, all the locations for how they discern, even if they can discern more and have knowledge about that more than us. Correlation nature it shows how that is being used by how no one fathomed. It is evidenced where and how people are victims blaming other things, others themselves, for that which is recorded clear as day, bonded natures of predicate acts that are criminally foreign influenced. And it's against the other countries too, because of how identities are being used. That's why it's relevant to understand. That's why it's critical to understand why and how an archetypal criminal enterprise and or a negative value nature progression self-value effectively maintains self-value though, and then maintains roles of defenses of that, because that maintains exploitations of it, where and how we are an identity of volume, as value, where volume equals value as nature / nature as value. And this is not complicated. Like if you start explaining the rules of English, it's not complicated. See, but we have people online associated with the policing of people that aren't the identity of Facebook, but they are the identities Facebook is forced to deal with. I mean, in other words, use the information of, use attribution of, or whatever, sensitivities towards the information of. They're telling the online platforms, the agencies, they're telling the news media lies. They're even recorded, this is an affidavit. They recorded WFSB, the Connecticut news media, with people on and off their locations, police forms, military families, and foreign families. See, but this is where everyone speaks through others. This is also where they separate subjects so they could simultaneously fabricate audio and video. Because all of that is actually manifest. And how it is actually manifest. So this has been creating instances. So you could draw 9 squares, say, across the thing. And these are the schools I went to, up to just Bachelor of Arts. And I did some other stuff, like a couple. I didn't finish a master's degree. But this is also since before the World Trade Center attack, in that context, and since, people from Weathersfield, Connecticut, interbranch, were our recorded intercities, and having been on and off Central Connecticut State University, roles with remote uses of what they've been doing, creating fake instances, or creating fake ones and overtly and totally made up, attaching little kids and their family members to fake locations, fake words, fake ties to doctors. Now these are doctors also that involved with people that aren't doctors, that deal with the doctors, with the schools. These are also people with judges and people like that are involved with all those narratives where they have classified, declassified, and they have these people with foreign and domestic. Same ones, names of nations, identities of nations used, in the narratives they told us in relationship to the World Trade Center attack. In the narratives they tell us in relationship to how people get, interstates, interlocations, areas, states, they get crazy sometimes. But see, everyone pretends passions and emotions, but when it comes down to reporting those simple to discern methods, those simple to discern discorrelation where people are pretending in correlation, their uses, their methods of doing it, their premises treatments are proofs. But there is no place to report where and how the people involved with databases are bringing up subjects, whether leaving out where they're already involved with fabricating audio and video and confessions that are relevant. And this is where and how our intelligence community, for example, and the intelligence community of all these other nations are used remotely. They have straight up physical delusions while they're pretending to be about integrity. The people of psychology in Russia and in America, they're in collusion as the people involved with their roles with attaching Saudi Arabia people on off Central Connecticut State University to roles with them with recorded, confessed, and demonstrated predicate acts intercities through time. And all those campuses with people tied to the predicate acts on my street, involved with the Officer Sullivan, switching names, forging names. People since when I was, now there's a Sullivan family on Park Street, also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, involved with various natures of predicate acts with kids on the child campuses in my town, and with a whole bunch of ways, natures of medical corruption. That is with police forms and judicial forms. Originally and still, they have no integrity because they're victim predators. Forgiveness is so you can allow someone to demonstrate how they're being used by a predicate acts delivery system method. And I'm not a lawyer. Thank God. The lawyers are recorded clear as day and night, are showing clear. They're standing criminal and citizens' natures. Victims, just like the healthcare people, just like everyone, sickly, distinctly, and differentially, because of where and how the method propagated and maintained, but self-cultivated, is fact-nature oriented, is instances oriented. Is relativity of instances oriented. And that has to do with where and how people are using the knowledge of logistics in relationship to, still with delusions. We have to address the delusions regarding all the pretended not known and all the pseudo education behind the not known by brilliant people that never had crime explained to them properly because of how crime was already criminally involved with all kinds of natures of organized crime that were built originally and still to be used by one method /S, where the plurality in that is that breaching screen, is that breaching method, is that breaching self-cultivation, is uses of it, is increasingly self-value uses of it having been, per where and how this keeps investigators, and reactions. See, this is tied to this vertical and horizontal predicate acts method that is fact-nature oriented in relationship to this Debbie Gold and to an O'Brien family before them, who recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, and confirmed where and how they prevent, where and how is prevented sickly distinctly on each nature of campus, but also sickly non-distinctly, so I can demonstrate to you from my campuses how the identity of the ground locations are used where they're attaching little kids and their family members' fake locations. They're setting up instances and furthering roles with the exploitations of exception nature, of identity. So these are adult campuses, fire campuses, medical campuses, and locations next to them simultaneously. So also, per this method, it has the sense and sensibilities of everyone, uses Jane Austen's phrase, where everyone spoke through other people, for example. That's part of the subject, /S. How that was exploited is. Because that is connected, in other words, a whole bunch of different ways at the same time. So if you try to focus on one of those same ways with locations and or right to where they have connections, groups. There's a South Civiello associated with neighbors of his and people associated with him. I barely know him. And like when they had me go to his, when they set it up, so I would be in his Cub Scouts meeting, and there was a Rich Dombrowski. These are people associated with databases that are criminally foreign influence, so they could keep remote uses of them, because they had that consolidated per their roles with a whole bunch of natures of predicate acts. I don't know Richard Dombrowski either. He was one of the ones recorded, confessed, demonstrated, involved with people on off Two Rod Highway in that area where it runs into Two Rod Highway, and where it runs into Hangdog Lane and into the Berlin Turnpike running perpendicular to it before the heart of Hartford. These are also people recorded, confessed, and demonstrated with that being and having been tied to judges and prosecutors and other countries in foreign and domestic, like private and things like that, involved with military. Involved with identity thefts. And like with these are people involved with medical racketeering with kids, like a Leahy guy, people tied to a Leahy guy, and a Brian Silver associated with New Britain Superior Court and Hartford courts, involved with crimes with their patients and criminals, and judges, and their family members, involved with wire crimes, mail crimes, medicines crimes, and drugs crimes, and roles with remote uses of investigators, and of untimely deaths, real or made up, involved with this. Because they also timed intercities, juxtaposed natures of predicate acts roles with the same house, /S on my street, also forced roles. And people that aren't even living here now. All with this, again, because these are people involved with the co-defendants, federal criminal co-defendants from a director of the FBI, also as victims, per how the interbranch when they were kids was involved with this method /S that is recorded vertical and horizontal, but it is simultaneously pretending other is recorded than is. So we have to have means to communicate online. They're pretending, they get people to pretend passions and emotions out of sequence. You have to be able to discern the methods that the branches of government use individually grouped and together, where and how they are inside this, having used them remotely originally and still. Locations, areas, and states then effectively and were maintained standing criminal and serious natures of premises treatments, of roles, needs, use of this. what it is. So there was a Rob Rodriguez associated with people with a Dillon family before my new neighbors moved in, and since that are involved with predicate acts with or against them, and or against them. But these are also people involved with predicate acts with various natures of courts and prosecutors, and that's relevant to where and how they have been separating subjects while forging and switching names into branch, while simultaneously having the media attach me and other people that were leading up to the World Trade Center attack and since to fake locations, fake relationships to others. They did this with a principal sex offender before he was caught, and more was his recorded, confessed, and demonstrated about that. Real or made up, it's actually involved with that. Also, per the on-off campuses, natures of and methods of juxtaposed natures of child abuses and of elderly abuses. Also, how sexually oriented too. Per also how the extent of where and how. For example, as criminally serious natures of methods that they already self-valued and that was already exploited. Each branch of government individually grouped in together. They have methods that are the subject / S individually grouped in together. Forgiveness is about so someone will allow someone to protract the short words, prevented the Native Americans first, where and how that everyone's forced to use the short words and protract from that. So they make fake short words, and all that is manifest to this. It was missed. It was propagated by a breaching method that effectively, easily, like it did with and maintains, like it did with the World Trade Center attack. Self-valued uses of identities and of difference. It made increasingly self-valued, and while denying it, the difference between Saudi Arabia and America physically, because this is complete possession of all locations, areas, and states. Further, inter-science is here, there, everywhere. Inter-campuses further. We need free speech to go right through the physical delusions that makes opinions regarding regarding the suburbs, let alone the most forsaken locations. And we have to do this simultaneously for it to be correct, which it is correct. We just follow, we follow correlation nature. And I'll show you why and how you have it was maintained. You are individually grouped in together. Per like an animate child abuser, child abused. If you're 180 years old, this before anyone was an identity, before our founding parents were born, this method with slavery was sickly, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously north and south. And the records regarding the history / the recorded self-value having been criminally foreign influenced. Like when people try to use discorrelation, that is not human means. And who pretends other as the people who want to pretend that they're about being calm. Oh, but that's what the people, the studies like. They like our presentation like this of these subjects. But mandated law says, don't attach me to fake words, fake locations, fake ties to other people. don't prevent mandated law when the courts individually grouped in together and on off the state judicial branch offices, like with the Firenze family, associated with them, also with the Dillon family, with people on off the body dumping spot of Billy Grasso and another spot reported in the news associated with that. Also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated those same people involved with predicate acts on my street, even if they've never been on my street, including a Claudia Scalora and a Subby Scalora and others associated with Florida locations and Connecticut locations and Washington locations and World Trade Center tied to predicate acts roles, illusions roles on CCSU and on and off other campuses. Tied on and off the locations around Harvard Hospital. Roles with predicate acts with medical corruption, identity thefts, frauds. Also with the policing of the campuses and other things with the doctors, intercities, with other medical campuses, not just Harvard hospitals. But this is relevant too, per where and how George Washington had to leave slavery. Where and how George Washington needs us to show how he chopped down the fake branches of government, whether he said that or not. But he left them too, because of that, but that method was already entrenched. James Madison, Marbury versus Madison, means real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice. That means that doesn't mean for them to fake it and force us to entertain their physical delusion and their uses of their identity and convictions where and how and their sequence shifts. Where and how they won't even put anything in writing, because once they have people in their locations, they fabricate audio and video. The courts do. They already did this, and they do this with other locations. Then they value the individual group to go, well, so that's why they're lying to the Attorney General. They have remote uses of the sense and sensibilities of everyone per their roles with this method /S that is on off the campuses connected and how it exploits it. It's on-off parks, on-off the edge places, how it exploits it. It makes people to roles with sequence shifts, lying about where people came from. So then they have to lie, they have to speak about and have differences where there's an array of fake sides of correlation nature, and everyone left out and leaves out the proofs that investigators, overt criminal enterprises and private ones and methods interbranch were involved with instances when I was a kid and when everyone was a kid. And you can discern it just by learning about the campuses I went to. But you have to understand the uses of the child campus. Now this is with a principal child defender that's involved with female judges, with predicate acts with him of other natures. And as that was their motivations for their roles then and now, with more then and now involved on his campus and what they are involved with through time, not just sexual. These are people exploiting how there are types of experts, types of crimes, and counters to them, types of lawyers know, or nothing. And or, two, you have to call them, communicate with them. Then they have their roles making up fabricated audio and video with the interbranch that has been doing that also with the news media, using readings of statutes, leaving out their roles with worse than war crimes, leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and since. For its identity also in relationship to what is actually recorded being and having been involved with uses of the lie progressions. This is including uses of the fake difference of homeschool kids. This is before the pandemic. These are people with medical people involved with uses of Facebook pages to hide their live aggressions, to hide their uses of how they pretend passions, emotions, mean what they don't, and dishonestly, and preventing people free speech, preventing Marbury versus Madison from being anything but theater or sick. See, remote uses of that is maintained. That one has changed. So there was a Debbie Gold, there's a South Sea Viola, and people all along. There's a house on, and there's a house on a street that they have all these people involved. They try to create instances where pretend they know me. But if that was put on paper properly, it would show they were involved with investigations, and identities of law that are with people that are also involved with predicate acts with a whole bunch of other countries. How they are kept, those motivations though. And it has nothing to do with the countries they represent. Like the Scleros and like the Spadas, involved with the judges and prosecutors and her boyfriends, with military, and also with involved with predicate acts with the databases of my school, on and off campuses, with kids through time of when I was in high school. But these are the people involved with further then and now with what I caught before he was caught off campus anyway. I caught them involved with worse. Then he was caught for upskirt pictures. Now this is also recorded on Facebook, but they've been replacing what is actually recorded on Facebook because no one's watching. These are also since federal criminals before they got caught, who were recorded involved with other natures of predicate acts, with and as the co-defendants of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants like a Thaddeus Grabowski, a John LeConte, his daughter, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated also involved with people all along the locations going towards CCSU from Wethersfield. CCSU is in New Britain. That are involved with identity thefts, frauds, predicate acts with foreign and domestic and military, and roles with remote uses of fake passions and emotions and care for when they bring up black identities and names in this. These are the same people involved with that, where there are insidiousness natures of fake care for black people as the people that are using the intercities locations that rolls with this vertical and horizontal database method. That is for even worse roles with locations, and is even worse roles with uses of that, which maintains it, even wanted and needed them to be pretended evil or fake good for other reasons. They are not illegitimate. So it also has them in roles with people like with the Domain family, involved with that. I never had anything to do with them. They pretended other. They tried to make instances when I was a kid. They were recorded, confessed, demonstrated, also involved with the Thaddeus Grabowski and the group, people with the intelligence community, and with medical racketeering and drugs crimes with kids, where they have the right to do drugs crimes with kids, but they don't have the right to, where they're involved with, even also sexually natured crimes with female judges. They have to pretend emotions there more and more. They have to pretend passions. They have to value fake passions and emotions, identity thefts and frauds, roles with identity ground locations, like the locations in downtown Hartford, where the clubs are, downtown Hartford, which is right around the corner from Fox Connecticut News, right around the corner from Capital Community College, right around the corner from like where they have acting theater. So these are police forms. There are Crone brothers. I don't know them, but I explained there were exceptions that they tried to present. The people, the men and women that were involved with them, there were kids involved with Department of Transportation, Department of Motor Vehicles, people that are undercover police, associated with sexual abuses, with even female judges, even black-white female judges, as evidence, per their roles also with KKK-themed people involved with sequence shifts, identity theft, falsified police reports roles, wire crime, mail crimes that are known. There are probably more. Now, I never tried to contact that Joseph Kovinskis in my life. I only know him in context related to relevant confessions and uses of the lie progressions that they are sourced from. He has a wife that was recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with the military and the intelligence community, and people on off campuses involved with intercities with them through time. Criminally foreign influence uses of those identity ground locations, and like people that associate with the who run the apartments and the leasing agents and things like that associated with his wife, as his wife. I don't know her name, Lucinda. I don't know her last name. I never had anything to do with it when I was in grade. These were people in other classes from me. And plus, when you're in class, you have things to do. Usually there was something to do with Mr. Abruzzi. Is also involved with predicate acts with judges, and knowingly and or unknowingly, the only conversation I had with him, he confirmed, confessed, demonstrated roles with DeMorros and other confessions of people tied to Central Connecticut State University in New Britain through time involved with criminally foreign influence uses of the sense and sensibilities of principals through the uses of their family members, also being and having been involved with the natures and methods of abuses of the kids when they were kids, with their boyfriends and stuff like that, and then they have their neighbors. So they have people trying to hold on to insights without speaking it because someone told them something. But they're preventing from being told on the rape threats and other sexual and medical and judicial and executive and political roles and uses of roles with predicate acts on and off the campuses. So I'm not saying indict everyone. I'm saying we have to discern what having kept and what is keeping these identity ground locations and roles with a house on them. There's a I don't know the names of them. There's a house on Two Rod Highway with a Victorian house. I don't know if that's recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, was or still is associated with some of the people associated with the Phil Claw and other people involved with identity thefts and frauds, attaching me to fake locations, fake words, fabricating audio and video with Wethersfield Police, on and off the Wethersfield Police Station, they're involved with forensics locations, also with predicate acts with them, state police, FBI. They're also involved with, intercities, locations relevant for how they have a whole bunch of people involved with them where they won't put anything in writing and where all exception nature they don't respond to, and they keep delaying and sequence shift and forging and switching more names and saying, I don't know about that, well, let's stay on this subject, And they keep fabricating more audio and video with subjects while they have physical delusions. These are the same people involved with campuses in Hartford, New Britain, Middletown, that are involved with these locations that are off campuses, that are in relationship to uses of those self-value sequence shifts roles, self-value uses of overtly criminally foreign influence intelligence community associated with South Savio's neighbors and him, and uses of programs like the Cub Scouts, programs like the people associated with working with kids, the Wethersfield Community Center. How they have the Science Center in more than one location is in how they switched the policing to on-off campuses. They have like one off, they have one on with the campuses, is in relationship to what has been using them remotely, what has been using the foreign kids there. So I don't know, so they have a Leahy family, and they have various natures of courts, judges, and prosecutors involved with Russians, with Hartford Hospital, and with their roles of attaching me and Saudi people to fake locations, fake sequencing, and fake words, in with their roles with WFSB, with locations next to it. Mike Kerr, Joe DeMauro. People tied to them also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with, confirmed. Before that, I don't know them. They pretended other couple instances. I went to that place because they said, "Oh, there's a free thing. You go to this place." So I just went to see. I never used to seek those people out ever. So there are judges and prosecutors that have been setting up instances with people with identity thefts that I don't know at all, people I barely know, like Joe DeMauro and Mike Kerr. I never had a class with them. They are recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with identity thefts and frauds, and all kinds of natures of that, with people on Church Street in Old Wethersfield, and with the house on the corner of Church Street in Old Wethersfield, and all the way from there across to on where is Church Street and Main Street, that corner, and that's where it goes from there all the way to Central Connecticut State University. People involved with weird things and lipoaggressions that are involved with overt predicate acts roles, and so demonstrably as criminal and seditious nature. You don't take people and put them to fake words, fake ties to doctors, little kids, fake locations, and with principal sex offenders. You don't play these games, even if they made that up. That's even worse. That's what they reported. And I caught worse with that campus and with the other campuses as the ones involved with predicate acts before that of connected natures, also sexually. There's a Detective Samuto also involved intercities with these sexually natured abuses of girls and fake conversations with me and him. He's one of the officers that switched identities with another officer. And there's a whole bunch of they kept making all these complaints, so people don't make sense, because what they did doesn't make sense, because that's part of their roles with the medical racketeering, and they have the little kids involved with that, roles with that through time. So there's a Leahy guy. I didn't know his name when I was a kid. I never had anything to do with his kids, but he's involved with mayors and people with badges and with military. You guys, I'm going to counter you guys verbally with aggression. I've been asking you nice. Respond for the Schedule family, also involved with these judges and the people on Berlin Turnpike. I'm on Two Rod Highway associated with that Victorian house. Because those are the people involved with this filth law, involved with judges and doctors and people with these police fabricating conversations with me, stealing my identity, with houses on my street, their extended family members. Also involved with recorded, confessed, demonstrated people with the name Sullivan, forging, switching names, roles with wire crimes, and with this extortion, torture, identity thefts, frauds, worse, on my street over the